Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the West Cornwall Business Group Hangout on Air, the May edition. And it's a beautiful sunny day down here in Cornwall. So to celebrate that, we've got all the curtains closed and everything.
And all the lights on.
and all the lights on, just so we can be seen properly throughout this Hangout on Air technology as it is. And the show today, we've got two special guests who are from outside of the Duchy of Cornwall. We've got Dave Webster all the way from Reading and Peter Lunt all the way from Bournemouth. And Phil Sissons who's test driving a new webcam and microphone, and as are we, with our brand new,
Yeti.
blue Yeti. How did they come up with these names? I don't know. Okay, well, before we move on to our main topic, which is Google Apps, their use, the benefits, and how else they help you on Google+, we'll just do a quick introduction and say hello to our guests. So, first of all, hello, Dave Webster, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to recently.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me back. I have to say, it's so hot in Berkshire, we're wearing shorts. But you've only got a headshot, so I'm not going to prove it. Basically, I run my own computer consulting company, and we help clients embrace this thing called cloud, of which there is none in the sky today because it's so sunny. And we like to compare ourselves with the Apple iStore experience without having to go to the iStore. We come to you and offer the same sort of service as Apple do, but obviously transitioning you onto a cloud platform. So that's what we've been doing for the last little while.
Okay, and Peter, how's Bournemouth today?
Bournemouth is a little bit high cloud overcast, but then we are about 200 miles in the sort of north of Cornwall, so from the bottom left. But anyway, but it's it's gone a little bit cloudy and not very Bournemouth at all, really.
Okay, what have you been up to recently with your business?
We've been doing lots of things. We've been doing some video production, do some more actually next week. A few websites. It's been quite a lot of web work recently, actually, with both with building and helping people with their SEO.
Okay, and Phil, how are you today?
I'm outstanding, but as the same as you, I'm down in a cellar somewhere where the sun is a lot higher up, and here in Cornwall, in Falmouth, it's sun is glowing nicely. I'd run a company called Magic Consulting, which basically is to help companies actually grow their own businesses, look at things that will help them, the entrepreneurs and the leaders, the owners indeed, to improve on what they're doing. My mind's slightly elsewhere. We're off on a rather orange plane tomorrow from Bristol Airport to Mallorca for a couple of weeks. So this last week I've done more ironing than you can shake a stick at.
Excellent. And Sue, what's been keeping you busy the last few days?
Well, I've been very, very busy on my castles tour, my Cornish castles tour. So I did a gig at Pentilly Castle with my son Dan. That was a concert of my own music and also some general folk music and some of Dan's music. And then the next day I was at St Mawes Castle with my classical strings trio, and that's continuing on this weekend. More castles and more gigs, so very busy.
Lots of castles.
Lots of
Excellent.
castles.
Is that how you say castle in Cornwall? By saying castle?
Well, I prefer castle. You know, it's kind of like a blended accent.
Scones.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm suspecting that they might be foreigners in Cornwall, but I don't know.
Foreigners.
Yeah.
Do you think?
What, English people?
I thought people in the south of England said castle.
There's no R in it though, is there?
No,
You know,
castle.
it's just an as far as I'm concerned.
And the Genius Loci end of things, we've been very busy, a bit like you, Peter, with lots of websites. We've launched a online pasty website this morning for McFadden's in St Just, and we've been doing lots of SEO as well and photography, so we've been very busy.
And lots of eating of pasties just to make sure.
Lots of testing of the produce.
They're really nice.
Yeah, they're very nice. It's essential. It's just something you have to do.
You do.
Right, so on to our first topic, which is
How do you
Google Apps.
test drive a pasty? He asked naively.
How do you test drive a pasty? You have to eat every variant they sell.
Is it pasty or past?
Pasty.
You know, here we go.
Oh dear. See, people wonder why you can't keep to the timings on these things. It's
I'm sorry.
it's okay. Right. Google Apps. I have to say that I'm a little bit on the fence on these because I suddenly realised as I looked at the Google Apps website or web pages that I do use some of them, and some of them I'm not sure whether I'd need. So I'm not quite sure the benefits would be for my business, and I'm pretty sure there's lots of people out there who watch this in the future or are watching at this point in time probably will have the same kind of questions. So over to you, Dave, first of all. How would you kind of sum up what are Google Apps?
It's a suite of tools for communicating and collaborating. It's, I guess, the easiest thing to describe it as is a Microsoft Office and Outlook without the need to have any hardware. The only prerequisite that you need is a domain name, which you can either own yourself or we can provide for you. And it essentially allows you to do everything that you could do on a Microsoft platform without having to spend hours fixing computers or having to buy them in the first place. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it is.
Okay, and so what are the kind of apps that make up the Google Apps suite?
There's a whole host, really. So anybody and a lot, how we got into got to know each other was through the Google Plus platform, which is the social layer that's used both on the professional version, the Google Apps for Business, and the free Gmail version. But there's Google Drive, Gmail, Calendar, Contacts, Hangouts. I mean, it's a full suite of tools which 5 million businesses around the world are now using. Some of the biggest installations have 110,000 users on the platform.
Right.
Or you could be a very, very small cottage industry using it, growing, maybe have 1 or 2 employees. And the beauty of this is obviously you don't have to spend loads of money when you start up, and it grows with you or shrinks with you depending on how your business is doing.
Okay, and Peter, how do you use Google Apps at your business?
Yeah, we've been using Google Apps, well, pretty much since we started the business about 6 years ago. We actually got the free one and still on the free one. We're fortunate enough to get the free one. You have to pay for it now. But so we use it mainly as an email client, but also actually over time we've used the Google Apps Marketplace, which is a sort of a bolt-on to the regular Google Apps, which is Google's way of actually opening their API to third parties to plug in all sorts of goodies. So you can have task management, project management software, pretty much every sort of type business application you could think of, you can bolt into the side of your Google Apps and actually use it as part of it. And even to the point where, for example, in your Google Mail client, you can have what are called Google Gadgets. So, for example, let's say you've got a CRM system, a customer relationship management system. You think about it, email is very action-oriented. So often, as a result of an email, there'll be a task to do. So on some of these CRM systems, you can have a little create task button right within the email. You can create the task, it takes the context of the email and puts it into your CRM system. So it's very integrated, and that's what I really like about it. It integrates perfectly with Google Plus. Obviously there's a calendar, and then when you pick up your phone, they're all there as well. It's all joined up, and you don't have to think too much, which is good for me.
That'd be good for us, actually. Phil, have you used Google Apps? Is that something you use for your business?
I have. I've used it in a fairly large corporate environment on one of the projects that I was involved with, and I support the fact that you can get into lots of capability. One of the things in another environment, and from personally, I'm actually looking at transiting from Outlook. I've been an Outlook baby since I was born, probably, So all of my mental thinking, my storage mechanisms, where I handle my email, my tasks, my calendar, has all been in Outlook, and I actually have been quite happy with that, I have to say. Very expensive to buy initially, but once you're done, then it's only the regular upgrades. And to a degree, you can, if you're careful, skip every alternate one. With the increase of using Google for searching and for various other activities, I'm finding now that I'm actually having to transit quite a lot of what I do in Outlook across into Google to handle things like the Hangouts, the calendar, and with the Android phone that I had for some time, I found there was quite a pull on me to take a lot of the information that I had in Outlook through into Google and then bring it into the Android phone. So that now has continued off into the tablet that I use rather than the phone. And I'm finding myself increasingly doing everything in Google Plus, Google Calendar, Google Tasks, the email, the Gmail, and various other things. So I'm a comparatively new user to it, to the sort of things in terms of project planning and that type of area. But I found that it seems to have met all the things that I wanted to do. I've not actually gone to the Google Apps for Business level yet. I'm doing it in bits. But I can see in probably, maybe a month or so, I'd actually go the whole hog and just have everything under Google.
That's another really interesting point in terms of what Google Apps for Business can give you, because it makes the transition from an Outlook user to a Google user very simple, because there's additional tools that you can use. So if you so wished, you could actually continue to use Outlook as your email client and move on to Google Apps for Business, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. So that's a really interesting point you make there, Phil.
So is it something that would tidy up kind of part of your online life? I must admit, when we first started, I was always adamant that we're going to keep our own domain names for our main business email addresses, and as you start to integrate yourself onto onto Google, it gives you Gmail accounts whether you want them or not. So when you set up a Google Plus account, you have a YouTube one, and then you go and have your analytics account. It gives you if you try and log in with that one, so you've already used that one, so now you need another address. And then for my AdWords account and my AdSense account, I've ended up with different Gmail email addresses for each one, and every time I'm trying to log in with the same one saying, do you already exist, it's made me say, no, you can't use that email address again. So I've ended up in a complete mess. And I suppose the other issue is that every time I rejoin a part of Google through a Gmail email address, it wants me to join Google Plus again as Phil Aston. So there are several Phil Astons out there. Most of them with blue heads, but I wish there wasn't. There's only actually me here, and in same for our Genius Loci page. I only found out a few weeks ago that as I've been working away on building the main brand page up, that there's another one sitting in the background connected to our address here, that Google loves that one, and that's the one it seems to want to keep hold of. So will joining Google Apps help in any way in this dilemma?
Well, we've just, I mean, that's again a common problem. I think a lot of people that have kind of dabbled with Google solutions, and particularly the free ones, have had a similar issue. So our solution to that, we were just working with a client a month ago, Paul Allen Media. He had a similar situation, and his business is media, and he was really quite concerned, as you are. So what we did in that case was we provided him with a Google Apps for Business account, which was really like a blank canvas, so that everything that he had in that account, he could start from scratch again. And I think one of the problems is you don't know which account you've got where, so it's all a bit higgledy-piggledy. So by starting with a brand new environment, it's a way that certainly works for Paul Allen and also other clients as well.
When you say starting from scratch, I know that sounds exciting for some people, but for others, it sounds like a nightmare after all the endeavours you put in place. So explain or try and sell starting from scratch is a good thing.
And yes, I mean, I think that does sound kind of scary, particularly if you've invested a fair bit of time and effort in your existing platform. But there's good news there as well, really. The benefit is, you know, you've got a blank canvas, and what you can do using various tools is transfer your existing work into that new canvas. But you're doing it one step at a time, and you're doing it in a controlled environment. So that enables people to then just make sure that their Google local registration, for example, is used with their domain, and there is only one. And once you've transferred that across and you're happy with it, you can then go back with confidence to all of the other Google Locals accounts that you might even not know that you had, and delete them with confidence. So you could call it sledgehammer to crack a nut, but it's certainly proved to be a very successful way of succinctly bringing everything into one place in a controlled environment.
So does that do, because I know on Google Plus itself there are communities on there where apparently you can register with various people who actually help you get rid of the account that you don't want anymore. So you're saying that the Google Apps route is a better way of getting rid of duplicate accounts?
It's certainly the simplest way I've come across doing it so far, yes.
What about you, Peter? Have you had any experience of having duplicate accounts, or is it just a Cornish thing?
Well, I think it might run out. I think it gets worse the further west you go, actually. No, I mean, I've been actually fortunate to have had one personal Gmail account, which I had pretty much since Google came out, and then we got the Google Apps account. So I've been fortunate in that respect, but I can see the problem, and I think it's a problem that, you know, Google themselves created, because essentially they started bringing out all these different products, and they basically, as you said, you needed a different Google account to do that, different Google, and now it's all under the one account. It's almost their problem to fix, I think. I think the beauty is if you go down the Google Apps route in the paid-for route, you do get their support 24/7. And I have to say, the experience I've had of using their support on behalf of clients that we've helped onto Google Apps, their support is fantastic. They really do take time. Okay, it takes you time to work through with some of the issues, but they are really very good, and they'll phone you back and they'll say, is everything sorted out now? And as in this whole sorting out issue, they can follow through on that with you. So I think they're trying hard to sort out a big problem they've created, but certainly if you can go through the pain, there's quite a lot of gain to be had.
Yeah. Very
Excellent.
good.
That sounds very good.
You like that, Sue? That rhymes,
I
doesn't it?
do. I'm impressed with that.
Yes. It's a poetry from Bournemouth. It's very good.
I think one of the things I'd add, which is part of the problem, is although I've not been in Google Apps, I think that I've managed to limit the number of Google identities or email addresses or things or logins that I have. Having said that, I'm finding a surfeit or an increase in the non-Google ones as well. So I've got, you know, the BT Internet, I've got the TalkTalk, I've got my own website address, 2 or 3 of those. So there's a number of email address capabilities that have come up over quite a long period of time. So I'm not entirely certain the multiple identity issue is maybe Google's exacerbated it, but I'm not entirely certain it's their own problem really. And if they can, you know, one of the things that's becoming attractive to me about the Google Apps is to bring it more down into one place where I was able to set up aliases to carry forward the previous email addresses I had, if you will, or identities, and bring them into one spot, which is in, as far as I can see, a single user ID in Google Apps. Am I going down the right? Sorry, am I going down the right track, or is that just a dream I have?
I mean, again, that's a very it's a brilliant example because I don't think you're alone. I know people that have got Yahoo accounts and Hotmail accounts as well, and the great thing is you can have a one-stop shop because you can authorize all email to be delivered to your Google Apps account, and therefore you can just go to one place, and you can still use those email addresses if you wish. It gives you the option as to what account you want to send it from. So I would agree with you. I think we quite often get asked to help clients. They know what they want, and we just give them what they want in terms of what the end picture looks like for them. And I've found Google Apps, and I know Peter mentioned that there was the free version up until a year or so ago, but in terms of cost, you're still talking about £33 a year per user, which when you think of, you don't have the advertising, you have the 24/7 telephone support, and it's on a professional enterprise platform. I'd argue that you might actually be safer using that than you would using traditional on-premise computing anyway. So I think it's got a lot of benefits for £33.
Is that, Dave, £33 per user? Is that like per domain or per user? Say you've got, say me and Sue have got our own email addresses for for one of our companies. I mean, that's the other thing. A bit like you, Phil, we've got several businesses running from here, and they've all got separate domains and separate email addresses. But for instance, if you've got like my personal email address, then we've got like a general inquiries email address. Does that count as one account, or is each email address a user?
You can do it, so if you've got generic names like info or contact us or sales, the best way to do that is to set up an alias, because it costs nothing, and you can have loads and loads of people on that alias free of charge. Whereas if it's a personal thing, you might want Sue to have her own email address and you have yours, then that would be 2 accounts, and therefore right, it would be 2 times £33.
Okay, and that's per domain, isn't it? Obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think, am I right in saying, in terms of the aliases, I mean, you obviously there's the alias like an info app, which is, I think, in Google Apps terms, is a group or traditionally an email forwarder. But you can also have what are called secondary domains. So if you've got phil@geniusloci.co.uk and phil@abc.co.uk, you can, providing it's the prefix, the bit before the @ is the same, you can have all of those domains feeding into one mailbox. Provided you manage those those emails to the different domains in the one mailbox, that still counts as one account. You don't need 2 accounts for that. It's basically, it's per user, really. I think, is that right, Dave?
Yes. Yeah. And when you compare that with, we quite often help clients who might be more familiar with an Outlook, with a Microsoft solution. They're offering Office 365 as their cloud platform, and you compare that cost. If you wanted to use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, for example, on iPad, which has just recently been made available, you'd have to go on to an Office 365, what's called E3 platform, which is their enterprise level 3. Always with Microsoft licensing is never easy, but you're paying £180 a year for that. So, if you want mobility and simplicity and consolidation, all the things we've really spoken about this afternoon, I really would consider looking at Google Apps for all of the reasons that we've said, really, because it's a good value proposition.
I think that, sorry, carry on.
Just to chip in there, I mean, as you do web development, as we do, Phil, and obviously when you build a website for someone, you set up their domain, they want email as well, and typically in the past we've offered that as part of the web hosting, so to speak, and their email therefore becomes part of that web hosting package, and therefore, just as the web hosting is probably going to be on a shared server if you're outsourcing the hosting, so their email is on the shared server. And increasingly what we've seen over the last 12 to 18 months is real problems with email on shared servers, because essentially if someone on that same IP address in terms of the mail server is sending out spam, then that IP address gets blacklisted. and suddenly, for no reason at all, you completely innocently find you can't send email to someone, which is a real pain. And it's mainly because there's a lot of blacklist companies out there saying, oh, we've seen your emails come from an IP address that's blacklisted, we're not going to let it through. And you can't do anything about it. Even you have to wait 7 days to get removed, or it's just hassle and pain. And I think the good thing is with the Google Apps platform, which is really with new clients, we've been encouraging them to use that, is, you know, it doesn't have those issues. And if anyone wants to take on Google and say that people have been sending spam through a Google server, then Google themselves will sort it. They won't require a blacklist company to sort it for them. No one's going to take on Google. So it just, in terms of the pain of running email services as a web developer, it is just not worth doing on a shared server anymore, I don't think. I mean, Google Apps provides a perfect solution for that.
Yeah, I mean, we moved to a dedicated cloud server actually 12 months ago because of that reason, because we were on a shared server and we suddenly had somebody on there, got blacklisted and everything went down. And so we moved to a dedicated server. But I'll admit that if the most complex part of running a website for anyone is the email system. We've got some clients where the email system is outsourced to somebody else because they've got 60 or 70 different email addresses, and we need to have someone else look after that. So I think if anything's going to happen, even when you're moving websites from one place to another, it's the email that seems to be the most complex area. Moving files and making things work seems to dawdle compared with getting people to actually be able to communicate.
We had exactly the same thing with a client last month, and that, you know, support what you both say. It was a very simple solution. We were able to implement it in one afternoon, no impact to business. So yeah, I agree.
The good thing is as well with the Google Apps tool, in migration, they give you a tool to migrate your existing email. So you basically hook that up via IMAP or even just an IP address into their existing mail server, and this tool will suck across all their existing email. So just migrating email can be such a pain if you're bringing someone across from another platform. So that's really helped as well. It's still takes time, but it's certainly a lot less pain than I've had in the past with these sort of things.
Well, that's very useful because we've won a brand new contract with a huge holiday resort, and one of the things we're doing is moving them to our server, and they've got tons of emails. I think the email system itself is over 2 gigabytes in size, so there's a lot of stuff in there. So this does sound very good. Now, one of the questions you mentioned about what is a single user. Let's say, for instance, Sue's obviously got an email address at Genius Loci, and she's also got one at Classical Strings, which is another business she runs. So that would, well, from what you're saying, Peter, that would be classed as Sue would be signed up as the user. So if she had 2 separate email addresses to 2 associated businesses, would she need to have 2 accounts, or would they understand that Genius Loci was part of Classical Strings?
Well, I think David can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but essentially, what you basically sign up with one account, with one domain as the main account, and everything else, every other domain then becomes secondary domains to that one account. And so you can just very simply then pull in your email from the other domains, providing you can manage all those emails from these separate domains within that one mailbox. That's the issue you do have. But then you can set up filters to sort of put them into boxes appropriately. Then it is one account.
And as we've said, you know, once you've signed up for an account, there's a whole migration team waiting to help you. So even if you did run into problems, you've got not only partners like Peter and myself, but Google partners, but also, you know, enterprise support from Google directly to help you do that. And one of the recommended ways, particularly when you're working with big clients, is you actually set up a pilot before you do anything. So you actually set a pilot domain, which could actually be a subdomain, and you have a subset of the company use it to test it thoroughly for all of the procedures that the company actually operate, and then they actually assist in the project rollout, because obviously what we like to do is we have a kind of teach the teacher kind of philosophy. So we invest a lot of time in a few key people in the business, and then once the deployment is completed and we've completed the training, you've got go-to people within the company that can answer any single question, which are going to, any new system, there's going to be lots of questions, but in answer to your scenario there, yes, we could do that.
Excellent. Well, it does sound very good, and I think the other thing that really brings it home to me is the fact that there's someone you can actually talk to. I mean, one of the reasons we're with the broadband provider we're with, which is BT's, is because I can get hold of somebody 24/7 whenever we ever have a problem.
Yeah, it's a big thing, isn't it? You do need to talk to an actual person.
Yeah.
Because it's very complex, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing I think is that over time we tend to sort of think is email's free, so why should we pay for it? But actually, when you think about £33 per user per year, and you think of how much email is so essential to our businesses these days, that's just pipsqueak cheap, isn't it, really? And if you're going to get a much better, more business class service, then I say, unfortunately, we got the free version, but I honestly say, Google, I hope you're not listening to this. If you started charging completely, I would pay.
Excellent. Well, I know we had a couple of other subjects we were going to cover, but I think it's been well worth sticking to Google Apps for this particular session, because I think anyone watching this in the future will find this very, very useful. So thank you very much, Dave, Peter, and Phil, for interacting and giving us that very useful info on Google Apps. So just before we wrap up, we'll just go around the panel to see what else we've got coming up in the next few days. So Sue, what are you doing?
Just very busy with my classical strings trio and quartet, playing for weddings, lots of new music arrangements for the brides, lots of modern songs and film music that I'm arranging at the moment, and keeping my Coastal Composer project on the go, so juggling lots of musical things.
Yeah, and lots more Hangouts and they're being prepared in the background as well. And Phil, you're going on holiday, so that's you sorted for next year. Yeah.
I'm going to have a trial in terms of having to live with the clear blue skies and the warm waters and this.
Oh, what a shame!
It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Difficult.
Yeah. Okay, and then in southeast Cornwall, Bournemouth, Peter, what have you got planned for the next?
Well, I guess we've got half term coming up, so I dare say I'll be summoned to do something at some point. Of course, that'd be an absolute play. We might go to a castle. Who knows?
Yes.
But in terms of business, there's more stuff. I'm actually filming some more video next week, so that should be good. But yeah, there's plenty going on. There's always loads of plate spinning, which is a challenge and sometimes a curse sometimes. But yeah, it's all good, really.
Is that promotional videos for clients, is it, you do?
That's right, yeah. This one was particularly for a client. They actually want it to take with them to an event. But promotional videos is mainly the things we do, but we also do event videos, all sorts of training videos, pretty much sort of tend to be short things with promotional videos, but yeah, we do quite a bit of that over time.
Okay. And Dave, what are you up to?
Well, the other thing that's keeping us very busy at the moment is there's still about 30% of PC users using Windows XP, which is no longer supported as of April last month. So we're taking that as an opportunity to help people embrace some of the stuff we've spoken about today. So once you've got all your data off the computer, it just makes that kind of thing so much easier. And the other thing, we're actually working with not-for-profits as well, and education. So because Google Apps for Education and not-for-profits is free. So I don't know how you described it, Peter. Cheap as chips. I like to think value for money, but it's keeping us very busy at the moment. So yeah.
Okay, and for me personally, I'm doing lots of search engine de-optimization. It seems to be what I do more than anything else. Is people come to me once their website's kind of been hit on the head by the latest Google algorithm changes. So that's what be keeping me busy. But I just want to say thank you all again for for attending the show, and we'll see you all soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.